Hello, heroes, and welcome to Kvell. I'm Jamar, the spiritual director here at Kvell, and we have been working on a series of programs putting together what we feel would be most beneficial in supporting you in your mental, your physical, and your emotional well-being. And one of those tools is the breath. Now, you may have seen another video we've done on that, but I'd like to introduce you to something that I feel very passionate about, and that's the Emergence Breath. So I have been working with breath for more than 30 years, and this is a culmination of all the different disciplines and practices and certifications that I hold. Now, the Emergence Breath is a conscious connected breath pattern, which is to suggest that the inhale and the exhale are connected when we breathe. Now, this conscious connected breath that I'm going to introduce you to and that we're going to practice isn't meant to be done in your day-to-day life 24/7. It's a technique that we set up as a spiritual discipline for the potential of what this breath has to offer. So since the body primarily gets its life force through the way we breathe, and 90% of the body's detoxification happen through the exhale, the breath is pretty important. There's basically a rule of 2-2-2, and it's I can go 2 weeks without food, 2 days without water, and roughly 2 minutes without breath. And then most of us start to get into trouble, which just kind of speaks to the importance of your breath. And your breath is the most powerful tool for change. And we call it the Emergence Breath because you get to come and show up in your life in a way that's profoundly impactful, healing, restorative, expansive. These are words that I feel very comfortable with. So what we want to do in this Emergence Breath, in a conscious connected breath, is we want to breathe in and out through our mouth. And that's strictly about volume. It's a more refined way to breathe in and out through your nose day to day. Your body processes gases differently when you breathe through your nose. But for the sake of what we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to introduce a lot of oxygen into your system. Now, you can't hurt yourself with oxygen, so you can take a deep and full breath. In another video, we explore the potential of diaphragmatic breathing. Maybe you look at that one at another time if you haven't had a chance to review it. Diaphragmatic breathing suggests that we're going to use our diaphragm. Now, our diaphragm lives like a little parachute right up into our chest. And when we employ that muscle, it pulls the lungs down into our belly, down into our abdomen. And the belly goes up and down. And that's evidence that we're breathing diaphragmatically. So one of the things that's foundational to the Emergence Breath is to breathe diaphragmatically. Now, you may be a chest breather, and that may feel a little awkward, but we want to begin to explore the potential of utilizing this expanded lung capacity. Since 75 to 80% of our energy comes from the way that we breathe or the way that we don't breathe, this is the best tool for shifting that. And a beautiful thing is, it doesn't even require a state of consciousness before we begin to breathe. That is to say that there's nothing that you need to do with your thinking. You can come into and sit down and have a little breath session with yourself in any state of consciousness, in any state of upset. And as long as we get the mechanics down, which I'll share with you, then you're usually going to be profoundly affected with just even a 5-minute practice. You could build up to 15 and potentially longer in some guided sessions, but we want to start with 5 minutes. So the way that that breath looks and or potentially sounds is something like this. You can take a few breaths with me. Your breath doesn't have to have sound. I add a little bit of sound to the breathing so you have a sense of the cadence. Ideally, your breath is without any sound. Now, one of the things that's important in this particular breath is that we get your inhale longer than your exhale. It's fundamental. The way we normally breathe, not necessarily how we naturally breathe, is with a longer exhale. And that serves us. But for the sake of introducing more oxygen into your system, we want to have a longer inhale. So I was trying to reflect that in my breath pattern. The exhale happens through a relaxing of our diaphragm. So when we're used to using these muscles, what happens is this starts to go on. We use these muscles in a way to make the lungs expand to draw in breath. It's not a very efficient way to breathe. So using your diaphragm is the mechanics of how the body is meant to breathe naturally. So those of you that are belly breathers, your challenge will be in getting the breath up into your chest. You've probably already got this down. Great. Now we want to expand up here. Now, why would we want to expand into the chest if we're already breathing diaphragmatically? That's because there's a lot of qualities that seem to emanate from this part of our being. Not only do the heart and the lungs and the breast benefit from more oxygen flow, but we seem to be able to access a deeper experience of love and emotional connection. That's a good thing. And for those of you who are living your life breathing up into this area of your body, great. I celebrate what you're bringing already. But what we want to do is get you grounded. Breathing into your belly is a very grounding experience. Here's where your power comes from. So you want to touch into that power. So you'll be more in the body, the digestion, elimination, and reproduction, all of the issues that seem to emanate from this part of the body physically, they all benefit from an extra flow. So if those are some issues, then we want to begin to breathe down there. For those of you who suffer from some challenges in your relationship that we might call codependency, that's primarily a chest breather's nightmare. So what we want to do is begin to touch into the power that's available to you here, so you automatically have more clarity about your boundaries. How amazing would that be, just through breathing into your belly? So a full diaphragmatic breath that starts here and then moves up into your chest in a wave is what we're after. Here, and then falls in reverse through just a relaxing and letting the exhale go. Then we breathe without pause. It's a very important piece of this introduction of the breath, is to breathe without pause. The breathing without pause allows for a greater buildup of not only oxygen in the system, but a higher vibration. This is a vibrational breath. And what we start to introduce through that conscious connected breathing is a higher vibration. Why would we want to have a higher vibration in the body? Good question. So what happens is we call heavy, dense vibrations in the body illness and or disease, imbalances of sort. That's the heaviest, densest expression in the body. When you introduce a higher vibration through the repetition of this breathing pattern, what starts to happen is a law of physics comes into play. Not many of us are working with the laws of physics day to day up here, but we're intimately familiar with them in our life. Gravity is the one that impacts us most. Gravity doesn't really care what it is that we drop. The path of least resistance, as far as gravity is concerned, is to the core. In the law of physics, as it relates to entrainment, the path of least resistance is from the heavier, denser vibrations to the higher vibrations. So what starts to happen is those low vibrations begin to move up. And when I say move up, they move to the highest vibration present. So you start to clear some of the misunderstandings that you have going on in the body and or illnesses and or diseases, potentially through an introduction of not only more oxygen in the life force, but a higher vibration. And then secondarily, we begin to address the things that you store in your unconscious, the things that very often run the program for us. Undigested life experiences, issues that are stuck in your tissues, as those begin to integrate or clear. And those are the only two choices when you start to introduce the emergence breath. You will either clear or integrate what comes up. As that energy moves more freely through your physical self, and as you start to clear some of the things that you're holding in your emotional house, there's an availability or an expansion of your consciousness. So what does that mean? That means almost immediately you start to feel more connected, you feel more loved, you feel more a part of. The illusion of separateness starts to fall away, and we feel more a part of a global community. The us and them mentality has a tendency to fall away. And more than that, there's an abundance of joy and a connection with yourself. So ultimately, what we end up with is the gift of your unfiltered self, which is really what we're after, which is really what our hero journey is all about, the unfiltered expression of self, allowing the fullest expression of yourself to come forth in your life without having to do something other than take a breath. So let me review a couple of the steps that are really important here. We want to breathe in and out through our mouth. We want to breathe diaphragmatically. We want to get our inhale longer than our exhale. And we want to breathe without pause. So no pause at the top or the bottom of your breath. You don't have to worry about hurting yourself with the introduction of oxygen. It's safe to breathe. Start with 5 minutes and see what a difference that it begins to make in your life. You might experience a little bit of a lightheadedness when you first start to breathe. That's okay, because your chemistry is changing and your brain is adjusting to more oxygen. How wonderful is that? So I'm excited to introduce this to you today to see how naturally this supports the unfolding of your hero's journey and how in keeping it is with to heal, to feel, and to be proud.